Violating, even if you say that this is for educational purposes only. What they now do is they break them up in little video clips, and then they reference back. You actually see the hack on over 4 video clips. Okay, so what they now do is they're trying to get it out. So it's really cool to check out it so you can see all these programs running. Most of those codes are running in GitHub. So where does that code end up? They still end up back into our ML machine, which I will show you guys how the ML machine is working. So they've built a new version, which is RubberDucky 3.0. It doesn't actually, it runs now in a different script form and also do JSON attack, so you can use a different format of attacking. We're running new codes at the moment, how to detect all of the way it's running. I'll show you guys basically how we detect it if time permits. If not, just get me at the booth and I'll show you guys how we run those detections. Okay, so from there, let's quickly connect to my environment.
Doc, what's your password?
MFA. This is probably the best thing that you can get. That's the first thing you always do is MFA. You need to hack my cell phone and you need to be in proximity or close to me to get the token.
No number verification on your MFA?
No, iris. Everything is iris recognition. We don't get SMSs or anything like that. It's all iris recognition. Okay, so this is advanced threat protection, what I was talking about basically. So in here, if I go to a device in my environment, you will see basically it looks like a war zone. It's supposed to be a war zone because we're testing stuff. Okay. So at the moment we're testing a lot of Linux running at the moment, and we're doing testings on how to detect all these stuff, attacks and stuff. But one of them was ZeroCool. Okay, so I just want to check which one I did. So ZeroCool, I think it was this machine that we run it on. Who's familiar with ZeroCool? Did you guys remember this? From what movie it was?
Hackers.
Hackers, yes, 1994. Fine. Okay, so it's running, detected that. That's what I'm looking for. One of them we actually ran a hacking device on, and I just wanted to show you guys how it detects the device. It will tell you this hacking device. There we go. So as soon as you plug it in our system, it will instantly tell you the hacking device is running, and it's mimicking a keyboard device or it's mimicking anything in the network. So you can try and run any of the hacked path devices in our environment. If you plug it in, it's going to scream, it's going to kill it, and it's going to say it cannot be run. Now, for you as an IT administrator, for instance, you need to run to that machine now. And because it's a physical device, right? So it's physical, somewhere on the network, somewhere in a company, it is there. So a lot of our competitors sometimes can't see that because they build on top of Windows. So they have APIs running. We don't have that. It's built in the operating system. Okay. So there's a big difference between how we do detection and behavior detection versus how our competitors are doing behavior detection. And that's probably the only marketing I can tell. Okay, what I know about. Okay. So the rest of the marketing I don't know. But a cool thing is what we also do is how do we test that whatever you run in your organization is actually active, right? When you run a GPO policy or something like that, how do you actually know it's active? How do you know that you can run it without actually running a hacking device? Are you guys familiar with a company called Red Canary? Have you ever heard of Red Canary? So I'm a spokesperson for Red Canary. We're pretty tight. So if you don't know them, go to Red Canary. Oh, sorry. And you can go to GitHub. No, Great Canary is broken into two organizations. One is that they do advanced threat hunting as well, and they actually build this. Well, you can say it's a hacking testing code, but there's a difference to them. When I go down to getting started. So what they did is they've run something that you want to know about. This is your Bible. Not in, but in, that is your. No. When I go to multi-type framework mode, maybe it's really just a bit from here. I'll show you that now. So if you want to run the test, you can actually choose what you run for Linux, Mac, or Windows. If you click on Windows, you will see all these tests are running. There's plenty of tests that you can run. So the T12118, for instance, that is in your multi-type framework, that will be there. So you can basically run all of these tests in your Windows environment. Now, there's something that, let's see if that's going to work. If you run it, there's a code that's running. Okay, and this is where our red team comes in, the Microsoft Dart team. Okay. So one of them is not security. So when that code is running, globally, Microsoft don't know that that's a hack or not a hack. So they will act if you are part of our licensing system. Okay. If you run it here, it sends a code out. That code goes back into our system and says, okay, it's not a hack, don't worry about it, it's a test. So they're just making sure that they don't act on a hack. Let's see if we can actually run a hack here. Are you guys familiar with the Lasagna project?
Isn't delicious.
Could be delicious. Depends how you look at it. I think it's pretty delicious. But let's see if it will run over here. There's possibly how you run this. Make sure everything is turned off. Okay, when you run Red Canary and you commission for your machine to run it, you need to run files. You have to say exclude directories. Okay, you have to run prerequisites before you run everything else. Otherwise, the offender is going to scream. Nothing is going to work. Okay, so you have to turn everything off, everything running, then turn everything back on again, and then run your test. Okay. Certain things is just going to scream, doesn't matter if you turn it on or not, like Mimikatz and any variation of Mimikatz. There's over 6,000 of them. Okay, it's going to scream. Okay, because it has a bit of a code of that in it. Okay, I just want to see if this is the one that. I think it's not the one I run. Okay, so let's see if we can run it. How much time do I have there? 20 minutes. So let's see if this machine. This is the C2 system. Okay, that is the actual policy cloud system, so it's not this machine. It's this machine over here. So what we do with this is if we turn something on and we want to make sure that our systems are running, that it's particular, let's say we want to do credential hacking and we want to hack credentials or something like that, we'll turn this on, we'll run through it, we'll try to do the LSAS scrapping, all that kind of things to make sure that the device is turned on, and then we go to the next thing. What we found out works the best is to test them independently. Because you don't want to go what we call a Hail Mary, but you just run everything that's in the repository for hacking. That's in that it will detect everything, and then but it's just too much to actually go through all the work to go and check what has happened. So you want to run them one, give them a day, see how it looks in the sock. Run the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and so you go. Make sure you've got a clear view of what you want to test. Because like I said, you can either test it to see if the functionality is on, you can either test to see if it actually breaks into my system, and then you also want to see CVEs and stuff like that. So while this is running, on the back end of our system, we actually run CVE detections. So when you go to our, there's so much different ones, the vulnerability, that's your recommendations running. Yeah. So you want to see in your environment, what is all the updates that you need to do in your environment. So if you go to weakness, for instance, first probably to weakness updates, yeah. One back. You will see Chrome, okay, VirtualBox, Firefox. So that point system over there, that's the most weaknesses in my environment. If I actually going to click on it, it's going to tell me what is the device exposed, installed, and what is the associated CVEs for that device, what it's running. Okay, so you really want to go deeper in to make sure whatever you're running, because when you run the testing, you can run it against it. Because if you actually go and check what it is, it's going to tell you what's the actual effect that it's got. Like if it's a zero-day attack or whatever like that, you can actually run it. And that's what we sometimes see, and I sometimes laugh when you have a Kali Linux running. People think if you run Kali Linux, you're a hacker. You're a researcher, okay? Try and give me a figure if you're I'm going to call it an actor, I'm going to call it a bad actor. If you're a bad actor, what is your licensing fee per year? Yeah, you also have licensing as a hacker. What is that fee per year? Give it about, I'm going to, 3 people. What do you think? How much will it cost to be a hacker per year?
Normal phishing suites.
Excuse me?
Normal, like the kind of cloud phishing suites that they do can be like $500 a month for a subscription
$500 a month,
at least, and that's just a
and that's only just a little portion of hacking, right? Okay. Someone else?
10,000.
10,000?
Because they need to run all those machines at the same time.
35 to 120 grand per year. That's
Couldn't
on,
afford that.
that's what I need to do a lot of. So what do? Low hanging fruits like ransomware and stuff, get cash in, pay for my license for next year. If you actually go there, and I probably should not show you this, but just take it from there. Educational purposes, right?
Sure. This is Pulitzer.
No, but I really want to. There's a certain hacking program. It's just a good. I'll stick it over there.
How are we supposed to learn to protect our environments if you don't tell us about it?
See, that's what I say. I like that type of thinking.
I'm so curious right now that I could find out on my own search.
I just have to make sure that I have to run it in my head. We will see if there's some time left on it, so what the program is. That program is about $3,000 a month to run. However, it's extremely effective. Okay, the codes that these guys will run are not generated. Every little code you run is newly generated. It runs in the back end. It's super clever how it does it, and it bypasses a lot of security stuff if you're running them alone. If you're not running the right stuff in your environment, I can almost guarantee you it's going to pass. Okay. Yes, and I don't know if I can do it. It's like Russian roulette. Okay, so I run it to make sure that you don't run it. Okay, so let's keep it there. So yeah, we run all of those type of steps. Okay, so from a red canary perspective, I don't know to check if this will work out. You can run a lot of testing and making sure your hacking environment, you can build your hacking environment at home with your own machines and your own stuff. Don't run this in a company because it will open up gates. Okay. so I run it every year. Where is the script? Damn it. So that won't work. Okay, so the program I was wanting to run was called the Lasagna Project. You can go and play with it. It's very cool. So the Lasagna Project will, for instance, go, and this is a talk we had a few weeks ago. It will grab anything in your browser and it will actually, all the passwords that's cached, okay, from not Edge. So Edge works differently. So if you go to create on your Create Credential Manager, you will see all of these on there, right? There is no, I don't know what you call it, there's no LinkedIn or anything over here. You still know that you can get a LinkedIn password, you know that, if you're logged in, okay? I'm gonna change my LinkedIn password. Okay, so I will show you actually what it is. But if you go in over here, and you just go in, I'm not gonna go my LinkedIn password. Let's try something, oh yeah, okay, let's do this. Something you guys want to do. I'm a musician, so let's go to a place where maybe you guys don't go musician software. AKA multimedia. Okay, let's check if it will lock me in. Show you a quick and easy trick that you can grab basically any password or get any password in the browser just by checking the secret injection. Let's see if it locks me in.
Oh, yeah.
That could be that, just.
You can do LinkedIn, we won't tell them.
Because in your credential manager, there you've got two keys. This is your web credentials, and this is any credential that you will connect with, which is the iris recognition. And you can't actually get the password. See, you can't get the password. But if you go to your Windows credentials, it says show. If I click show, it's going to do an iris recognition, and then it's going to let me in. Unless I force it to do an MFA. So if you are a web programmer or anything like that, since I will say force it to do MFA, you can do that because it won't inject it in here. That key will be injected to the TPM processor. Are you familiar with guys with TPM? It will inject it right into the TPM processor, and because it's in a TPM, nobody has ever hacked the TPM. You guys know how long TPM has been available? Since 2002. Nobody really utilized it. We bought the Australian version of it, and we have it version 1.4 injected here. So everything that goes in the TPM processor, basically a fraction of it goes into the cloud as well. So you need to have the TPM processor, and you need to have the cloud key to get your key. Here we go. So let's see if I'm logged in. Oh, there we go. So we want to see that password, right? So if you go into any system, so I wouldn't suggest that your mom walks away from a machine, I wouldn't say your colleague. Basically what you can do is you can actually just go to the system in the browser, go down to the key, and okay, so everything is cached in the browser. You look very confused, sir. Everything is cached, especially when you're in this browser that I'm using over here. Okay, so the Lasagna project was specifically designed for that. So once you run the Lasagna project, it will go and grab every little thing out of your browser and give it to you. Okay. Now, if you want to go and check if you've been hacked, okay, this is a pretty cool place to go. You can go to a place called machine. I need to make sure because otherwise, if Microsoft sees it, I might close my machine. No, they don't close my machine. Sometimes if you run it, it just goes your machine, and then I need to send a little email via story, and then they allow me in again, into the system. Okay, so here you can actually run the test. So if you actually go into here, and you type in, lasagna, is it? You can actually run the Wi-Fi hack, decryption of TeamViewer, whatever you want to run. You can run this in your environment and actually check if your Defender is going to pick it up, or your security platform that you use is going to detect it and stop it from executing. Okay. So the thing is, once you've run all of these things, you can go back to back to your company or wherever you work or whatever you do and say, hey, we've done these tests. We are protected against those things. But be very clear of what you want to test and how you want to test it. Okay. So there's over 200 tests that you can run a year. Once it says contributing a test like this, it's not being built yet. You can say unsecure credentials and contributing test. So what Red Canary did is they opened it up to the public. So everybody writes a code to it, and then they review it, they check it out, they test it, and making sure it's not doing something it should not do. Because believe it or not, okay, I can say this. So this is a company that ran this, left the machines open, and just let it run on the servers and stuff like that. Hackers hacked the system, and we have the machines running, and hacked the whole company because they knew they're going to test, right? So because it was running on the system and they knew it's going to test, they thought it was the security guys just doing tests. So they had to come out of the organization and then ransomware and say we've got all the information. Be careful when you run it. So how we do it is, if we do things, we run it in a virtual machine. We kill the virtual machine, and then kills the server as well, and MFA the virtual machine. Because if you hack the virtual machine and you want to run it on another machine, what is it going to ask for? MFA, but what is it also going to ask for? It's going to ask for the TPM processor key. Because once you enable the TPM processor key, it injects that. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but only Hyper-V does it. None of the competitors do it. Okay? So what you do is, you right click on it, go to settings, and under security, you enable trusted platform module. Okay, now it's injected into the key, into this machine. If any hacker, any company, or when somebody leaves the organization, for instance, and they export this VM, doesn't matter what you do in organization, it could be a server, it could be anything. They can take this with and mount it and run it outside of the organization, maybe to do data exfiltration or whatever they want to do, right? As soon as when you do this, the first thing it's going to ask for is, oh, you're not running on this machine. Where is the TPM processor? You cannot have access to it. So it doesn't matter what password you have, what system you have to encrypt. So a lot of people will say, well, why don't you just run BitLocker? Right, BitLock the system. That's another way of doing it. I found this is much more effective to do it because it's now bind to this machine. Here comes the problem. If you run it on servers, making sure that your server have a TPM processor. Okay, the new servers have them installed if it's on premise. If it's in the cloud and you run anything in Azure, make sure from Azure Security you turn on it in Azure Security. Okay, you just have to say MFA and Azure Security. It will not export it at all because it's going to ask for a global account password to do it. Okay, so as soon as you enable it, it's just going to say, sorry, I don't care who you are, global account. Make sure that if you run global account, not everybody has access. So what hackers do now is that they're doing testing, which is called RDP hacking. I don't know if you guys are familiar with RDP hacking. I can show you this software. This is pretty cool. Can I? Okay. Okay. Yes. Okay. This is very effective. Okay, so if you run this, this way of doing, just see. Because you want to run it, there's a certain one you want to run. There's many of them, but there's a certain one that you want to run, which is called command RGB. There's a certain one that you want to run. Which is called, it's, my mind is not on the mind. How much time do I spend there?
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Actually, there is only one confusion because it's not until half midday, it's until 11:20.
Oh, so it's finished.
Yeah, but we could ask.
Couple more
like,
minutes, good.
Oh, okay. Are you talking now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, let me wrap up. Okay, so, get me the booth if you want to check more stuff out, because the RDP hacking that we do over here is extremely effective if you don't do injection into your, like I said earlier, connector into your hypervisor and you actually put it here. You can actually, what it does is it jumps in it. It makes you think that the certifications, if there's a command in the middle of that. The remote user logs in, everything goes, but I get it in clear text form, not brute forcing, clear text form. And you can utilize and use that again. But the gentleman is over here, I'm going to clock out and go. Yeah, let me at the booth and if you want to talk a little bit more deeper into it.
Thanks, Josh.
NADP promise to be a critical.
Okay.
I really tried to run it on anything else and have nothing else. Okay, just-
Fair enough, sir. Come on. Brody. Where are you from?
I am,
Oh. Yeah. I just asked, general thing, kind of a last minute, mic it up as I go along.
He's on the water.
Alright.
I'm sure you'll do awesome. Nah, you'll be fine. This is an easy room, right, Rick? Be easy on it.
I know one of them already.
I'm leaving.
He's my boss.
Oh,
Was my
perfect,
boss,
perfect.
yeah.
I'm leaving.
You're out of here?
Are you talking on Mark?
I should that's great, just a general conversation
Sorry, you actually might want to.
on why it's important.
Oh,
why you-
okay. Yeah, it couldn't hurt.
Yeah.
We just leave it on there. Yeah, I just want to make sure you do. the-
It's here.
There.
We're just gonna leave it here? Are you staying for tech support or are you staying for participation?
Whatever's needed.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got an interesting amount of he's okay. Yeah.
Is it dongle? If they need it,
Yeah.
right? I'm just gonna leave it here for you, right? Are you running this?
No.
James comes in and is tending it. He hasn't given us any instructions to
Okay,
manage it ourselves.
Then we should get you instructions to manage it yourself.
Okay.
We can do that.
Okay, I think it's streaming right now, so that's good.
So you might have to keep shake the mouse, because
Oh,
if
yeah.
it goes to sleep, you're gonna get locked out,
Okay,
right?
okay, perfect. So he's got it set up. So we just come here and move the mouse once in a while.
Yep, and so, you want,
fellow path management.
He will present.
Mhm.
Once he's shared his screens, they'll show up across here, and you can click on it so that it shows up in the stream, and it'll show up side by side in the stream.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, cool.
And then it's up to the speaker whether or not he's going to monitor chat or wants you to monitor chat, right? So yes, if you could facilitate in this room, please.
Yeah,
Sure.
sure.
Yeah. I can do that. I got to run in like an hour for a call, but
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah, all good. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be a team effort. It'll be a team effort.
Yeah, it'll be great. Thank you. So make sure it doesn't go to sleep,
Yeah, just keep him come and move the mouse once in a while so it doesn't go to sleep.
because if it goes to sleep, you're going to get locked out,
Yeah.
and then you won't be able to do
Why don't you just
anything.
turn that off? Why don't you just turn that off?
Policy
Policy?
will
Great
let
policy.
You
Yeah.
can try.
Yeah.
You can try, but I bet your policy won't let you.
It's a book, sir?
For how long? For how long will we have?
I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. Let's see if we can turn it off and save ourselves some time.
Okay, you want to
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Yeah.
So so on premises.
Never. Plugged in, turn off. Never.
Yes, well, yes, that's good.
Never.
Exactly.
Never. Perfect. Awesome.
Better.
We set the screen timeouts to never.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Okay.
Every second.
Every second. That dongle stays here. That's our secret dongle.
Yeah, that's a bit.
Yeah.
You can sit.
Yeah. Perfect. I'll make sure he's okay, and then I gotta go check on Jacques. So I'll float
Okay,
around.
no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
No need to apologize. Jacques had to start like 10, 15 minutes late because he couldn't get his HDMI port to work. So.
Yeah.
Well, I'm waiting for that.
Okay. I don't know if you've got a USB-C, but we've got a USB-C to HDMI here too. That seemed to work.
I can't really see. No, I'm getting there. Well,
Can I give you extra pressure then? Can I stand over?
Just lean over the back boom, yeah.
no pressure.
The audience is great.
Yeah, every time.
Do I need to push you?
No, it should just work automatically. So you got your HDMI in. Yeah. You can try, this worked, for the last speaker. For some reason, it's just USB-C, just to HDMI. You can try that instead. You know, live demo gremlins and all that, right?
Oh, you gotta love it.
Yeah.
This one.
Every time.
Sweet.
And then try, can you duplicate your screen and just detect the secondary screen duplicate? Oh, there you go. Excellent. All right, sweet. You all good, bud? Cool. All right. All right.
Okay. We don't want you here.
Thank you, sir. My name's Mike Turner. I come from the child side of things and McAfee. But what I was going to do is talk to you guys around data protection and the use of the internet. So basically, I put this slide in because I found it pretty impressive that that's how much data was created in 2020. It's kind of scary how much stuff that businesses and people and everyone is creating these days. So, as everyone knows, security data breaches are big and huge. There was just a really big one from where I spent a lot of my life in Australia and Optus. They had a massive data breach which exposed 12 million people's details, including mine, so bank accounts, credit cards, passports, driver's license, all those kind of things. So that's probably Australia's biggest data breach, and it's been quite interesting because it's been in the news for the last month, which is unheard of for Australia to talk about security in that kind of way. So data is obviously the keys to the castle in most organisations. So your reputation what you hold on your customers, what patterns, all of those type of things are key in your business and how you guys do and operate. So obviously having that exposed to the bad guys or having data exposed is incredible brand damage and reputation and that kind of things. So with the world has changed a lot now, obviously. Some of us work from home full time, some of us go into the office, it's now hybrid. And that has changed the way data moves throughout the organization and how data is managed throughout an organization. So a lot of it sits in the cloud, a lot of it sits on people's endpoint devices. And obviously there's still the data center and the server side of the data. So what you need to do in a complete data protection plan is obviously understand how your data flows through your organization, understand what your data is, and then start the process of classifying it, start the process of protecting it. So data protection it's a business process, it's a business tool. Yes, IT might run it and manage it and keep the lights on, but it is fundamentally driven through your business and your various application and stakeholders. So part of a successful data protection plan is going off and talking to your business units, understanding the data. They'll typically say all of our data is important, and you'll say, well, here's a big fat dollar sign that means that you have to spend a lot of money to protect it. You then start going into a bit more rationalizing of how data flows through the organization, what data is, and then obviously putting some processes and controls in place for that. So data protection DLP is not just about technology, it's also around how you manage your data, how you basically delete your data, how you purge your data. One of the biggest things you can do as an organization is purging your data. So your data has a life cycle of whatever it may be, 5 years, 2 years, 7 years, depending on audit compliance requirements, and you should be purging that data once it's gone. And one of the things that the Optus breach is brought to light in Australia is that they've kept data on people for a long, long time. I've been in Canada 7 years and I've been an Optus customer in 10, and my data is still exposed. So it just goes to show that, getting rid of your data will reduce your risk and reduce your exposure if something bad does happen. And also, companies don't need that data. So there's certain things that they need from a regulatory and police point of view, but getting rid of data is just as important as protecting data. So typically so I've done a number of DLP projects over the years, and when you go to have a successful DLP project and a successful data protection plan is you need to discover it, you need to obviously inventory it, classify it, detect, and then protect. So protect is normally the last step, and that's obviously an enforcement module where as your data goes in and out via email or uploaded or whatever mechanisms through USB, it's protected. The discovery phase is normally a scary thing for a lot of organizations because they don't understand where their data sits or how their data actually flows through the organization. They might understand that it sits on this file share, but there might be 3 applications that can directly suck out that data out of that file share and then upload it or make reports out of it or it goes into another database. So that's where I spend a lot of my time is helping organizations understand what their data actually is and then inventory it. So classifying your data. So that's a scary thing for a lot of companies because it can be time consuming and it can be large, but there's a number of tools and techniques out there to make data entry and classification a lot simpler. You don't necessarily have to use the technology, but it obviously helps. And there's a number of technologies from a lot of different vendors that will make that easy. The other part of that is once so how I normally recommend doing a data security project is you put a stake in the ground and say, as of today, all of our legacy data is X and all of our new data is Y, and then you basically put in new file shares or you put in new partitions and that kind of stuff. So you start fresh. And as they access the old data, you force them through technology to classify it, to update it, to put mechanisms in place. And data protection is not just DLP, it's obviously encryption, it's rights management, it's file integrity, it's all of those different technologies. And to have a successful program, you need all of those type of things to execute. Then the last part of it is obviously, once you know what your data is detecting it. So having tools that go off and do an inventory or suck it back into some kind of DLP tool where you can start to understand and classify. Oh, sorry. So most data classification projects and those type of things are coming from legal compliance, some kind of regulatory. There's also the other side of that is brand loss. So if you look at a lot of these companies that have had data exposures, it's cost them millions and millions of dollars in reputational damage, as well as sometimes civil damages. So, for example, in Optus in Australia, they're actually being forced to pay for people's new driver's license and passports. So that's unheard of in Australia. It's never happened before. So it'll be interesting to see in the end how much that costs Optus. And it's also cost them a lot of reputational damage. In saying that, there's a number of other ISPs in Australia which are in the same boat, who are madly panicking and rushing around spending a lot of money to try and fix up the hole that was an Optus, which exists in some of the other ISPs. And obviously, loss of intellectual property is key. So if your data is exposed or your competitor is exposed, I've had a situation where it was two supermarket companies. They were do marketing and leaflet campaigns. So one company indirectly had access to or had the ability to see the other partners or the other customers' flyer campaigns. So if they were selling noodles for $3, they would have to, at the same time, their marketing campaign would be noodles for $2.50. So that then cost them a lot of money and lost opportunities. So part of that is it's not just protecting your data so that it can be stolen or exposed, but it's also protecting how you do a business and how you market and how you can do things. I've done another DLP project where it was a engineering company. They fixed big Caterpillar machines, and part of what they did was Caterpillar would give them a service book with all of the various components that needed fixing and the rough times and costs of what it would cost to do those services. Their employees started emailing them directly out to their customers, and their customers would come and say, well, I've got to do 20 grand and it says 10 grand. So in reality, they weren't being ripped off or they weren't being overbilled. It was just in different circumstances when you're changing a tire in the middle of nowhere and you don't have the proper tools and resources. So what they used their data protection plan was they actually removed, they let those schematics go out, but they removed the pricing and timing that was related to them. So that was their use case for DLP. In the end, their customers actually really enjoyed that because they still got what they needed to see, but they weren't exposing how much their costs were and then having legal fights and those type of things. So that's just obviously a quick graph on basically the cost of data exposures and the industry and those type of things that are happening. So the typical data breaches that we're seeing these days are running into millions of dollars of cost to a customer. And it doesn't matter if you're a small or a big customer, basically the cost is the same. There's obviously there's the time and the remediation. So if you have to get in an IR service to try and help you in that sort of thing, they can be expensive and they can be time consuming. Like most organizations these days, there's a lack of resources, there's a lack of skills. So having your data protection in place and having some kind of way of managing and maintaining that is key to stopping the bad guys. So obviously data, there's various types of data in the organization and how it moves. So obviously there's stuff like USB keys and those type of things. There's data sprawl where a user's working on an Excel spreadsheet and then saves it to their C drive. Technically, they might be allowed to do that, but then you've also just created a data exposure or data registry because now it relies on it, or basically resides in two places. And the end users don't always good at tidying those things up. So you need obviously tools and technologies which can go off, find those data, either tombstone and remove that data from where it was located and put it into where it's supposed to be located. Or if it is allowed on a USB key, say encrypt it or put rights management on it so that only these select users are allowed to edit it, open it, cut and paste it, print it, whatever it may be. You've got the other side, obviously the rest of that is around is threats as well. So obviously ransomware, malware, all those type of things, it's all around stealing your data. So data exploitation under organizations these days is pretty huge. And it is all about the data. It's why would you go in and rob a bank when you can basically hack a number of customers, steal their data, and then obviously use that to your advantage. And that's where we're seeing a lot of threats these days. And then obviously being forced to buy your data back from the bad guys is always entertaining as well. And the number of companies that I have seen do that is quite scary. And whether they're big or small, I've seen a number of police departments which have paid hackers millions of dollars to get their data back. And that is fraught with danger as well, because you're obviously relying on A, there's a trust factor that we're going to keep your data back, and B, they haven't manipulated it or embedded some kind of bad stuff in it, so that when you do get it back and you start using it, it starts the whole cycle of the hack and the data exfiltration again. And then obviously cloud. So cloud is where everyone's going to and everyone's moving to. Some people are along the way of the journey, some are doing a hybrid type stuff. So understanding that your data can live across multiple clouds, multiple environments. You might have, I've seen a number of organizations where HR has gone off and bought a tool for a particular project, never tell IT, never tell security. Then security finds out about it one day through shadow IT or various other mechanisms. Then they have to go off to HR and say, what is this? What is it doing? Why is that data up there? What are the controls in place? So it's the sprawl of data across cloud applications, and managing that is pretty huge. So you need, correct? And you obviously need to be able to control that data as it flows, and obviously identifying that data is pretty key. So this is pretty much how I would do a typical data classification or a start of data framework. So it's obviously classifying the data. So it's working with the organizations, the business units, understanding how they classify the data, what they classify the data as. A lot of the times they'll just say we don't have classifications, so it's working with them to come up with classifications to then tag that back into their data. And the next start of that is obviously once you've got the classifications is going through and discovering that. So this is normally when you're using tools to go off, scan various cloud applications, hard drives, file shares, USB keys, you name it. So it's discovering that data, it's then sucking that back into some kind of reporting tool, and then obviously starting the process of remediation and obviously classifying as well. So another key part to this, and most organizations fail to do this, is user awareness. So it's not just having all the tools in place, they're not actually training your users in what data classification and what data protection is a waste of time. You have to train them, you have to get them to understand, you have to get them to think that this data is important. They might pull some data out of a couple of databases and save it and use it for marketing, use it for some kind of process, but in reality they've just created a data incident. They've exposed data that was sensitive. It's now sitting in a C drive or in a USB key. So it's training them to get them to think. You can also use technology within tools to, as they're opening a document, forcing them to classify it or forcing them to tag it, so that it gets them thinking that, hey, when I'm using this data, I need to be a bit more aware of that. And that's an ongoing process, and that obviously ties in with phishing campaigns. It ties in with all that kind of user awareness. You have to train users, and you have to spend the money. And then the last part of it, the second to last part of it, is the enforcement. So a lot of customers will go off and buy all these fancy tools and then never actually enforce it. So that's pretty much a waste of time. So if you're going to do a DL3 project, enforce it, turn it on, make it do things. And that is scary and can have some unforeseen circumstances and issues when you start to enforce things, but it's also going to help you understand how your data flows in the organization, and then obviously put remediation and controls in place when you do the wrong things. So enforcement can be encryption, it can be rights management, it can be basically stopping a user from uploading it to Dropbox or one of those other kind of cloud type things. Or it can be that Albany County was sending it out to Fred in HR, and obviously that's it may be an allowed process, but they've CC'd some other people on that, which then exposes that data where those other users shouldn't have seen it. So it's all around thinking about that data and controlling it. And then the last part, which is there can be the overwhelming part, is the investigation part. So you need an investigation team, and it's not necessarily the same team that's using and looking after your existing alerts and your existing security tools. A lot of the time, they're going to be seeing sensitive data, which they may or not be allowed to see. And obviously, you need to train them in understanding that data. You need to train them in how to investigate it. You need to train them in, and obviously how to remediate that. So, a lot of times I see this given to the help desk. That's a dumb idea. I wouldn't do that because help desks have their place, but this is not it. You need business people involved in the investigation. So, because an IT person might understand how to do an investigation and find the data, but he doesn't understand the data. You could give me 5 documents right now, and I can look at them and say, yeah. So, you need somebody that understands that data. You need somebody that can give you the context around that data. And then get back to the start. So, DLP and data protection is a life cycle. It's a continuing cycle. I've seen a lot of DLP projects fail just because they stop. They do the first part of this and then they never bother to update it, or they never bother to add in new classifications or as the data changes. So you as an organization, you have to continue. It's an investment. DLP has a cost associated with it, but it also has a benefit associated with it as well. So you continually need to manage your data, go through it, remediate it, classify it, remove it, delete it when you don't need it anymore. Is key to how you make a successful DLP project. So this is a couple of use cases. So there's obviously more than these 3, but these are the kind of 3 use cases we see. So insider threats, that can come in many different forms. So a user inadvertently CCing the wrong person on an email, a not happy employee leaving the organization, sucking off a customer database, and then obviously taking it to their new employee. It can be other ways where your inside users are using their data but inadvertently causing data issues. So inside threat is key to protecting your insider threats is key to your successful data projects. The next part of that is obviously is around your data. Hang on, I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see. But yeah, so the inside data threats we've seen in the last couple of years have grown substantially just for the fact that a lot more users have a lot more access to data. Another part to the DLP which I talked about is around identity management. So having your users defined in what roles and responsibilities they have in the organization. So a user might start off in one department, move to another department. If you don't have the proper IDM and rights management kind of solution in place, they'll take your rights from where their previous job was to the new job. That way, basically, you've got a data issue there because they can access stuff that they don't need anymore or shouldn't have access to. And having a defined user roles and provisioning is pretty key as well. So data privacy. So there's a lot more industry type privacy standards and those type of things. So there's NIST and there's obviously the Canadian Privacy Act and those type of things. So a lot of these haven't had teeth for a long time. They're starting to have more teeth as they have more exposures. And it also comes down to the fact that senior management obviously have a responsibility and kind of are regulated to protect your data and obviously secure your data as well. So the privacy side of things is becoming a lot more prevalent. And then you need external threats. So as you kind of talked about, so ransomware, hackers, all those type of things. As your data as your organization is constantly attacked and sometimes breached, is stopping that external data exfiltrating, whether it's automatically through various tools that are uploaded into your environment, or whether it's a strategic data suck. So you've got to be aware of those external threats. You've obviously got to put protection in place and those type of things. So basically, where we're seeing a lot of things, or where we're seeing a lot of issues is visibility into your data. So obviously, you put things in place, like a lot of organizations have classifications, but they don't actually have tools to enforce those classifications, or they don't have the ability to actually go that next step and look where that data is. So for your insider threats, it's the visibility and it's understanding of your data is kind of key. And obviously controlling of that data as well. So like I said, identity management and rights management and user provisioning is very key. So you need to have a successful data security. You're encompassing many different technologies and many different methods as well. So having your users basically provisioned in a certain way, having only rights that are needed is key. You can have every technology in the sun, but if everyone's an administrator on their environment, or if everyone has access because it sits in one bucket on Amazon or wherever it may be, then you kind of defeated your whole purpose around security. And obviously you'll kind of talk about privacy as well. That's pretty much me, but if you have more questions or stuff, we can talk around things.
Does your product actually work?
This is my old boss, so yes. No, yeah, so obviously, what's that?
Better than his product?
Well, he's changed things, so he's on a different side.
On the different side of the house now.
Yeah. So,
In the channel.
but no, so yeah, so I like Peter and I have done a number of, well, those two in the corner actually, we've done a number of data projects together. So where we've had success is taking that crawl, walk, run approaches. It's not trying to do everything in a big bang. Taking one chunk, so either targeting the HR or the finance department, getting them up and running with the LP, showing them how their data is and where it goes, then targeting the next part of the organization, or then pulling in other people into the data project and then kind of expanding from there. So it can be scary, but if you take a systematic and a walk or run phase to it, your data project will be very successful. So,
what is it that actually makes customers take the plunge, like to it?
take plunge.
Yeah.
So a lot of time it is regulation. It is compliance type thing. A lot of the time, like customers' data just gets too big to manage, and they need some kind of mechanism of understanding how their data is, where their data lives. I see a lot of organizations, they just keep collecting data, or they have data there that's 10 years old that's completely irrelevant, but they keep backing up. They haven't purged it, they haven't deleted it. So it's DLP is really a business tool. It's really helping you as an organization process your data, protect your data, and then also purge your data as well. And it's not, when I say DLP, it's not just technology, it's a whole mechanism. So it's encryption, it's rights management, it's cloud integration, it's identity access management, it's all those types of things that make up a complete kind of data program.
So aside from incident response output, where are you seeing success in, I guess, companies getting interested in data protection pre-impact? What's motivating them?
That's really
Other
good
than
question.
your shit being on fire?
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good question. I've been involved in other times when people would send me to America to put a customer out that was on fire. So a lot of times customers do that. They kind of drink from the fire hose when it's all on fire. I'm seeing customers these days, as the cloud becomes, as everyone's moving into the cloud, it's understanding where everything sits these days. And a lot of organizations don't know where the data sits anymore, don't know that the data might sit in this S3 bucket, but there's 10 other applications that integrate into that, or take that data and move it to other locations, or give other access rights to it, or they manipulate it and put out reports and that type of thing. So obviously, as that data spools across your organization, you need to know where it is. And
I'd add to that too, because what I see the most from the cloud perspective is buckets are open, HIPAA is coming across the country. We were just talking about
Totally.
Bill C-29 for any infrastructure is going to have to log every damn thing that happens. And part of that's going to be is how you can actually talk about where and what is going on. If you don't do it, back to Angie's question around why is it happening, it's just regulations.
And I have to add to that, I've heard recently, like, we talked about that this morning, like insurance, you want cybersecurity insurance.
Oh, right. Yep.
If you aren't doing A, B, C, D, they're like, no, I'm not sure.
They'll either not insure you or your premium is that much more.
Yeah, so the Optus breach in Australia, that's really interesting with the insurance there. The premiums, well, they weren't cheap at the start, but they're insane now. They're at the point where it's unaffordable for organisations. So, and a lot of exactly what you guys just said is they've left it too little, too late, and the world's on fire, or there's been a big exposure. So I guess I'm very Australian centric because I spent a bit of my time there. But this Optus breach, it's been in Parliament. Like they've talked about it for weeks in Parliament, which has been very interesting because cybersecurity's never really had any teeth in Australia. We don't have the same kind of regulations. We don't have the same kind of compliance type. I guess if you look at US does data security bad because they have compliance. There's teeth behind it. If you screw up, there's jail time. There's huge penalties. There's obviously losing your job and most like that. So Australia's only just starting to get to that. So up until 3-4 years ago now, we didn't even have exposure. So if the company was hacked, it was they never had to tell you they were hacked. They never had to tell you your data was exposed. Obviously, it was in their best interest to tell you that they'd been hacked, but a lot of the times they would hide it under the carpet and hope no one heard about it. So that reputational loss is kind of is growing. Cyber insurance is another key one where we're seeing a lot of organisations. If you don't have those tick boxes, they're not going to give you it, or they're charge you a premium or something. So cool. Anything else? Perfect.
Good job.